We do this about once a month where we have an opportunity to sit down with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. And really, with Thanksgiving coming along in just a few days, this is a really good time of year to sit down and talk with him because, well, a lot of people, and he's a proponent of this wild game on that Thanksgiving Day table. We'll talk about that a little bit later this morning, I'm sure. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Kelton will be here for the hour, so if you have a comment or question, I don't feel you have to be rushed. The telephone number is 736-0300. First of all, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
I was going to say it's warmer here than it is outdoors today.
Well, but I'm headed outdoors. I took the day off to go hunting, and I'm sitting here going, "Oh, I got Bill's show." So I'm over here. I'm loaded up. I'm out there. Love it.
Do you like
Uh,
hunting better in the colder weather?
Oh yeah. I'm a big guy. I get warm. Like last week, don't get me wrong, it was pretty sweet when it was 65 degrees. Because you could go sit on a canyon rim somewhere and just kind of enjoy life out there in the middle of nowhere. You need to keep moving, and you're not sitting around looking at the scenery quite so much on a day like today. But nah, it's nice. It's invigorating. You feel that cool wind on. I don't know. I love it. This is my favorite time of year.
I know that when I was a kid, deer hunters especially, they like snow on the ground because
They
you,
s- the deer stick out like a sore thumb.
and the
Big.
blood does too once you
Well,
actually have to track them.
you bet. Deer are really elk, everything's really easy to spot. They're out foraging for longer hours. They're not just at daylight and dark. If you want to go see deer, right now's the time to get up there and look at them. They're in rut right now. We've got a few hunts still going on, but man, you can go out there. And one of my buddies is out the other day, and he looked over 150 deer in like an hour and a half, just driving around looking. And it's not every trip's going to be like that, but and you have to know what you're looking for. But the deer are out moving around, so are the elk, and everything's trying to put that winter fat on because they can feel it getting cooler.
It's like last month when I was at the elk refuge in Wyoming, and I was wondering where are they, and all of a sudden I looked over and there's about 2 dozen of them looking back at me. But of course, in October they weren't worried; they just continued to do what they were doing. They
Doing,
didn't have to worry about
well,
anything.
they'd snuck down, yeah, everywhere else around the elk refuge is hunting season, and they said, "Yeah, we found Shangri-La here. It's nice and quiet and safe."
You got something here that reads elk stack yards. What is that?
Well, what I want to do is talk about. I'm just trying to tell you some of the projects. I've got a bunch of projects that we've been working on. Um, this last couple months, John Guthrie, he's our landowner sportsman's coordinator, worked with the Wood River, Blaine County. He was able to get a grant. They paid for installation of some stack yards for ranchers up there. Last year, we had several elk, hundred elk, well, not hundreds, but lots of elk died up there last year. We had haystacks tip over on them. We had, because they'd eat underneath the haystacks, we had them jump into equipment that was parked around haystacks to protect the hay, um, break legs and things like that. Well, we were able to put up to close to 21 stack yards this year. We're completing those right now. Blaine County paid for the installation of 14 of them, and was able to give materials to seven other ranchers up there that are they're putting them up themselves. But hopefully, this will keep our elk population is bulging at the seams up there,
I was going
and
to say
so
we had issues too with some of that the poisonous plants they were eating and the like.
we did. We had elk that were eating yew. Uh, it's this Japanese yew plant that was ornamental plant that was up there. They was getting into that. We had more elk than we've had on the elk feed site for several years, and I was going to talk about that here in a little bit. That bullwhacker feed site. So, but I can jump right into that right now. Is what we've done is we was able to get a, a permit from the Forest Service. We put in a brand new storage shed. We've put close to $30,000 worth or 106 tons of pellets, hay pellets in there. We went up and removed a bunch of brush so that we can increase the number of feed lines. But we've just got an elk population that's growing faster, and we can remove them with hunters right now. And so we'll be increasing permits for that area next year because we have such a glut of elk up there. And the only reason we have that feed site, that's the only sanctioned feed site in the state of Idaho, the one up there, and it's up Warm Springs. And the reason we have it up there is because Those elk, when they're migrating out of the mountains, will migrate right down into downtown Ketchum. That's when they get into the Japanese U. We had one fall through into a window well and end up in a person's basement. Elk in a basement is not a good thing.
I
We'll take
remember there was a picture of the deputy holding a mattress, trying to like keep that buffer between him and the elk.
Yep, and then he was able to run it up the stairs and out the back door. But it didn't do any favors to the coffee table or the mattresses or the carpet. And so, we're trying to avoid that type of stuff. We're trying to avoid injury. The only reason we have that feed site is just for public protection. It would be a lot better off if those elk would migrate to a winter range, or they had a winter range to migrate to. But the way that elk population was established, the railroaders, when they was building the railroad up there, pretty much shot those elk out. They brought in elk from Yellowstone in December and started feeding them up there, and their goal was to get them to stay there. They didn't want to turn them loose and then they just migrate out and never come back. And so their goal was to keep them in the Woodward Valley. Well, they started feeding in some of those. It's been a while, but we're finally weaning them off those feed sites. They've developed natural migration corridors where they're coming out of Big Smoky, and they're migrating out to the Camas Prairie, and then they're migrating back in summering in those high mountains. The only population we have that are having issues with is still that population up Warm Springs.
And I was going to say, people out there, there's only a handful, I guess, that are really seriously opposed to hunting, especially in Idaho. And I grew
Hmm.
up in a small town. You never found anybody who would have been opposed. But you pointed out that the populations are just booming, and so people have to realize hunting isn't doing anything to discourage that.
No, and the thing is, I was teaching a class to a bunch of kids yesterday, and hunting is basically a method we use. Wildlife populations have peaks and valleys. You have upticks in population. You think of the rabbits. One year you see thousands and thousands of rabbits. 7 years later, you don't see a rabbit at all. Those are natural cycles in wildlife. Our goal with hunting is to eliminate the cycles. We're trying to keep it a level population or close to level. So we try to use hunting to take the tops off of those peaks so we don't get too many animals, because as soon as we get too many animals, they start getting in trouble. They start eating themselves out of house and home. We get overpopulation. We have a hard winter, or we have a drought in the summer followed by a hard winter. We got too many animals. They go into winter thin. Then we have a major die off. And then it takes several years for that population to grow back up. What we do with hunting is just try to take the tops off there so you don't have as high as peaks and valleys, and we can maintain a healthy population of animals in Idaho.
And keeping them safe too from automobile strikes and the like is an
Well,
important part of this.
keeping people safe. I mean, yeah, there's you feel sorry for the animal, but I feel much worse for someone who loses a loved one in an accident hitting an elk or a deer or something like that. They swerve, roll their car, and that's always a concern.
Well, that's
Especially this time of year. I mean, you can go anywhere around Twin Falls, and we're getting animal strikes daily right now.
yeah.
And so, I mean, Falls is a huge zone, pole line, Kimberly Road. We get some, but almost all the side roads, all the out area around us, the country roads near farms. A lot of deer have moved down in there. Fortunately, we don't have elk in downtown Twin. In the summer, we get a few moose, and that can leave a dent in your car.
Yeah, I'd say a big one.
So,
Like getting into the car or worse. Well, mentioning that out on the open highway where you're driving at 75, 80 miles per hour, these hits really sting.
well, they do. Yep, and well, I appreciate you bringing that up because we have. I wanted to thank Aramo Ranches and the Campbells, also ITD, Idaho Department of Transportation. They worked really closely with us. There's some culvert or some underpasses on I-84 over by Sweetser Summit,
Hmm.
major deer strike area. Um, and you're saying, I wish people were only doing 75, but it's closer to 80, 85 that they're
Yeah.
typically flying down that road. When they first built that interstate, they bolted gates to the underpasses, and they were heavy Powder River gates, those big green gates. Well, the deer couldn't crawl over them, they couldn't jump over the top of them, so the deer were going around and going up on the interstate. A few years back, we had noticed that when those gates were open, the deer were really using them a lot. We went in, we worked with the landowners. ITD was able to take those gates off. We put long wings of fence, wildlife friendly fence, coming off of the underpasses back, and then we put a new gate in that's a deer friendly gate that the deer can crawl over, can get over, or jump over. The cattle can't get through it. So now we can leave those gates locked year round, and wildlife can pass through easily. It's going to be kind of fun. We've got some or some game cameras up on those overpasses, and so hopefully as soon as we get a few pictures of what's going on over there, we can get some stuff, and you can see it on our Facebook page. We've got fishing game, Idaho Fishing Game Magic Valley Facebook page. Put all this stuff that we're talking about on there, and so you can kind of keep up with what the department's doing and get to see some of the images and the activities that we're doing.
I was going to say the website has a great deal of videos, and you've got photographs, and and rules and regulations.
Hmm.
People probably, if they're really looking, you have a lot of people out there who may have just moved to Idaho because they want to take part in a lot
Hmm.
of these things. The website's a good place to start for them.
Oh, it is. It's great. That's what we're trying to do now with our Facebook page is push people to our web page. And so a lot of our articles that we're or things that we're publishing on Facebook will say, click here, and it drives you right into the website. And that's Fish and Game. Spell it all out. AND fishandgame.idaho.gov. All one word. And you can go there. It has a ton of information. It has research. It has deer numbers. It has fish stocking dates, how many fish we're stocking, where we're stocking them. I mean, what better way to be a good angler than to know right where the fish were just dumped?
Now, you know a little bit about what's outdoors. I was walking along the canyon the other day. What did I see?
a,
This is
a bald eagle looks like to me.
yeah. He was just sort of soaring around
Yeah.
looking for his lunch.
That's cool. It's cool. There's a ton of eagles in when I've been up in the rocks this year. I've probably seen close to 20 goldens this year. I haven't seen many balds where I go because I'm usually out in the desert, but that's really good. Cool. That's one neat thing about right now, Bill. You probably haven't ever, but down by Hagerman, we get about 150 to 200 bald eagles that will migrate in there, and you can see them in all the trees and stuff down there. So this is a really good time of year to go out and view bald eagles
This is
on
why
the river.
my cats don't go outside. Uh,
Well, they need to eat too. No, the eagles.
we got more.
Owls will do the same thing though.
We got more with Kelton Hatch out of the way from Idaho Fish and Game in just a moment. It's 32. It's 20 minutes after 9 o'clock. I want to point out. He said he's going to get a caller or two about that, I'm sure.
I'm joking.
Our studio guest is joining us from Idaho Fish and Game. Kelton Hatch will take some of your telephone calls. If you got a question or comment for him today, telephone number 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Right at the freezing point. We're at 32. Probably we'll see another 10 degrees before things start to warm back up toward the weekend. Um, before we take any calls or move along to another topic, I do want to point out Thanksgiving is a week away, and you're a big proponent of fresh game
Oh, I
on the table.
love it. Well, yeah, I'm really, I like eating under your own fig tree. I like locally grown food. I like, I love it when we provide an entire meal, you know, something that we raised in our garden and something we harvested when we was hunting or something we raised, and you bet. I think it really adds whether it's a chunk of fish, a pheasant, a goose, a wild turkey, even a deer or an elk roast. I think that just adds something um, uh, extra to that meal. I guess it's kind of like the pilgrims didn't run down to the local grocery store. I mean, it was what the neighbors brought and things that they raised, and it's kind of fun. It's a little different sometimes, but it's quite fun to have that type of a Thanksgiving meal. And we always throw something in for Christmas too. I know when I worked in Alaska quite a bit, I'd always bring back at least one sockeye salmon for Thanksgiving dinner. And fish for Thanksgiving is kind of a little non-traditional, but it was really good. And I got to tell you a story, Bill. And one of the reasons I like doing this, and I like it better when one of my kids has harvested the animal. My youngest boy would gone out turkey hunting, and he had harvested a turkey, and we'd sat down, we was getting ready to eat, and we'd had our prayer and stuff like that, and he got kind of belligerent, and he looked at us, and he says, "Well, did you guys forget something?" And I go, "Well, what's that?" And he says, "You forgot to thank me for the meat." For providing the turkey. But there's a sense of pride in these kids, especially when others get to partake in it. It's fun, and I love Thanksgiving. I love getting the family together, and it's just another something a little different. But get out there and do some hunting right now. It's a good time to or go fishing. We got waterfowl, we got upland game hunting. We got lots of deer seasons that are still going. We got a lot of elk seasons. It's not too late.
I was watching a show on television last Saturday morning when I got out of bed, a turkey hunting, the patience that's required, and because and the hunter he had his face covered all but for his eyes,
Yeah.
and he was in a blind, and two or three times he had large toms in the area, but he just waited it out because they were apparently aware that something wasn't quite right.
Something was amiss.
So he waited it out until they came back like a third time before. So he because they're so quick, I guess, is why he was doing that. He wanted them to get comfortable with his presence.
Yeah, and they've got great eyesight, and he was making sure he got a clean kill. Bringing up turkeys right now, Bill. If you wanted to go up north, you can harvest up to 5 turkeys in the fall. That's a truckload. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a couple turkeys. And so, I've got a buddy that's up there right now. He's got put in for a whitetail tag, an extra whitetail tag. He has his regular whitetail tag, so he's up there chasing whitetails and turkeys. And typically, he comes back with between 2 and 3 whitetails, depending on how many tags he has, and then he comes back with at least his 3 to 5 turkeys. And so it's a pretty good haul, and it's enough meat to get him through the winter pretty much.
you need a basement freezer though.
Well, you need an upright, or maybe a chest, or maybe a chest and an upright.
Yeah.
But and that's what we have. But it's nice because very seldomly you don't. I don't know. We raise our own livestock also, but it's fun to do some hunting and provide that. It does take a trick to learn to cook it, so don't get dismayed the first time you cook it and it may not taste well. Do a lot of reading online. There's lots and lots of different recipes out there to make it good.
You have a note here that enforcement is still going strong.
Yeah, and this is kind of unfortunate. We had a really productive hunting season, really successful. Deer hunting success was up this year. From anecdotally, what it looks like, we're still waiting for everybody to fill out their hunter report cards. Remember to fill out your hunter report cards. We're actually having the drawing for some super tags for people that fill out their hunter report cards. And so get those in. We're going to be setting seasons here coming in January. But back to the enforcement, we've just had. I don't know whether there's been too much game out there or what, but we've had several crime or several poaching incidences in the last few weeks on these uh, short range weapon hunts, on the archery only hunts where people are using rifles, and just cheating. I don't understand the cheating part. I mean, to me, it's kind of, or poaching, because it's kind of like winning a baseball game, but you cheated to do it. There's no satisfaction in that. And so, to me anyway. And so, if you see something going on that you don't think looks quite right, you can get a hold of us at fishandgame.idaho.gov online, or you can call us at 324-4359, or you can call the dispatch for the sheriff's department, and they'll send one of their officers out there if you see something hokey going on this time of year.
And I was going to say, uh, it's very difficult. I know a lot of people who do cheat, but if you have to have someone else prepare it for you, get it ready for you, or clean it for you, that's usually when it gets out that you've been breaking the rules.
Well, yeah, something like that, or people see people out with spotlights at night, and things like that. And so just keep your eyes open if you see something going on. The other thing I wanted to mention, Bill, is if you are right now, we've got a lot of game animals moving across roads and things around here. If you strike an animal and kill it, you can pick that animal up and take it home with you. Now, if you're running out through the farmer's field to hit it, that's an illegal take. But if you
Right,
hit it on
right.
the road or something like that, you can pull over, harvest that animal. You just have to call us at the regional office, say, hey, I picked this deer up on Falls. Um, you can go online and fill out the mile marker where you hit the animal, and it'll print off a permit, and then you can butcher that animal and put it in your freezer.
And the processor would know that it was an automobile strike
You,
versus a
you bet, because you'll take that paper in with them, or you can butcher it yourself.
9:30. We've got another half hour coming up with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. It's 33. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. Just chatting about a little of the enforcement issues with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. He joins us on a monthly basis. Occasionally, he joins us more often if there's something that's coming up that's important to either anglers or hunters here in the Magic Valley. And we should point out, too, you have a comment or question for him, reach us this morning at 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Must be the wind shifted because we've dropped back down to 31 from a high this morning of 33. It's 9:34. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. You got a couple of things I know you still wanted to get through here today. We'll get to Bruno Dunes in a moment, but hunting seasons, you've got just a quick note on that. And a lot of people out there, if they're newcomers, important to know some of the details here, dates, times, etc.
You bet. Well, what I was just going to talk about on that is, and I kind of briefly ran over that when we was talking about Thanksgiving, is we're just about out of our second or non-resident whitetail tags. We'll still have some resident ones going, but those, if you're looking at getting a second whitetail tag, you're thinking of going up north to chase whitetail, they'll probably be gone this week. All our mule deer second tags are gone right now, and we're getting pretty low on elk, but we do have some elk seasons that are still going strong. Waterfowl season, we're in the midst of that. We're finally getting some cool weather, and so I think the duck and the goose hunting's been going really well for a lot of folks. The waterfowl, though, the ducks and stuff like that, I think they'll really pick up with the wind and some cold, and if we get a little bit of snow and just some of that fun stuff that I love going. We've got bird seasons that go clear to the end of January 1st in a lot of the area. And so we've got a lot of upland game going, and then the fishing right now is still really good. I know a lot of my friends, it's getting a little bit later in the fish as the water temperatures drop, but the water temperature is still pretty warm, and that's the temperature of those fish, so they're really active still, and they're still foraging pretty heavily, trying to get their fat on for the winter. And so, it's a great time of year to be a sportsman. The only thing that makes me mad is we run out of daylight to do it. I am not a big proponent of daylight savings time. I'd rather get up early in the morning in the dark and have longer in the afternoon. But we have what we have. But get out there and just enjoy the hunting seasons. There's a lot going on.
In northern Idaho, because they're in a different time zone, is it a little easier to hunt there?
Well, no, I lived right on the Canadian border for a while, and I mean, yeah, I went to work in the dark and came home in the dark. I mean, they have shorter days than we do by probably an hour and a half, and so it's getting dark up there by 4. And so, not really. It's just I don't know. I don't know why I like the other way, the light, because it's like I don't care if I drive. Well, I still don't drive to work in the light because I'm at work by 7 in the morning and it's still dark, and so I might as well be there at 6 in the morning,
Right, right.
and work in the dark for the first 2 hours, because then I get home. I love the afternoons.
But the other part of that is too is just like cattle don't realize that there's a time change. Uh, out in
Wildlife doesn't either.
right, it doesn't play by those rules.
Yeah, my boss just gets a little iffy if I'm getting there at 6 and I'm supposed to work at the public where most of them are still in bed at that time. So I can squeak the 1 hour in there because I need some prep time. But
6 o'clock is late.
yeah, well, for you it is, and
Yeah.
for me I'm up by then. But they don't like me at the office that early.
You've got a note here about what you mentioned wind a few minutes ago this time of year, and Bruno Dunes clearly is evidence we get a lot of wind around here. You've got a note about Bruno Dunes as well.
We do. I just wanted people to know. If you want to watch some kind of fun video on our Facebook page, we flew on rotenone, and what rotenone is a it's a it's an organic plant material that we render this extract from, and we spray it on. And what it does is it deoxygenates water. And so what we'd gone in and done was drained the upper pond at Bruno Dunes because we had so many carp in there. And then we went in and we electrofished, and we removed a bunch of the bass and the bluegill we could get with the electrofishing, and then we basically poisoned the lake with this rotenone. It's a organic material that after about, depending on how much organic material's in the lake and how much sunlight and how much water movement it gets, is how long it stays in there, but it's usually in the lake for less. It starts really breaking down after about 3 days. And we removed all the bass from that, I mean all the carp from that lake. It was basically, on this small lake, it was over 6 ton of carp that we removed from this lake.
Wow.
And the fun part is we got to take nets down there, and when they washed up on the bank, we got to dish them all up and throw them in the back of a truck and in the back of the boat and take and get rid of them. So that would have been a fun story for you to go out and do, or a fun job for you. Not really, but we got that lake cleaned out of those carp. The biomass, if you have 100%, 100%, 98% of the biomass of that lake was carp. Less than 2% of it was catchable game fish. That's why we poisoned to get rid of the carp. Now we're going to come back this spring, and we're going to plant it with bass and bluegill, and hopefully we can turn this into a really good fishery. We've done this on all our ponds down at Riley Ponds and down through there. The water is crystal clear. The bass and the bluegill are doing awesome, and we just got that done down at Bruno, so next summer go out and have some fun.
We've got about 20 minutes to go. More with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game on the way on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. At 9:40, it's 33. Our guest in the studio, Kelton Hatch, joins us from Idaho Fish and Game. Comment or question for him today, 736-0300, 736-0300.
And nobody wants to talk to us today, Bill.
Yeah, they're all out actually hunting where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
9:44.
Well, I will be, let's think. And if it's 44, I'll be on my way in 16 minutes.
We wanted to point out, too, as well, we still have a couple of topics we need to touch on before we wrap up the hour. Non-resident tags nearly gone.
They are those non-resident tags, and we talked a little bit about that, but those deer whitetail tags, the commission this year opted not to have a discount on the second deer tag. Good thing they didn't, because every penny we get, it helps us be able to keep our hunting and fishing licenses at a lower cost, and so we was able to sell most of those tags this year. We're getting a lot of push a lot of people coming in from non-residents that are starting to come back to Idaho. Game herds are really strong. We lost a lot of our non-residents during the recession, and now the dollar's getting stronger, and we're getting a lot of those hunters back. And if you build it, they will come. We got a lot of deer, and we got a lot of elk right now, and so lots of folks showing up to go hunting.
We have a caller looking to join us. And caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm curious, what do you do with all the carp? How do you dispose of tons of carp?
Well, we'd like to, if we'd realized we had as many, it'd have been nice if we could have found a farmer and we could have just ground them into the ground or something like that if they had wanted them, but they end up going to a landfill, or he may have taken some of these to a rendering plant. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't find out on that, and I should have, but I'll make you a deal. Next month, I'll make sure I know where we put them.
Yeah, I was hoping they would go to, some kind of a fertilizer.
And that's the best scenario on those, because we actually had people, when we do these rotenone projects, that come along and they pull the few game fish that are killed, and they take them home and eat them because it doesn't hurt the meat or anything like that, and so there's no damage. I do know the raccoons at Bruno Dunes were fat and happy because they pulled a lot of the carp off, and you found a lot of carp carcasses back in the willows. So the coyotes and raccoons, but no, you're exactly right. We need to, a lot of times we try to sink them in the lake, and that way that they can break down naturally, and then they put some organic material in the lake for the new population of fish to come in, and it provides feed for them. But and still quite a few of them stayed in there, but the rest of them, I think most of these we ended up in the landfill just because of where it was at.
On the other hand, things will grow well there now.
They will.
Yeah. Want to
So,
thank you
but
for the call.
yeah, thanks for the call.
Does make great fertilizer. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember hearing that the indigenous tribes would often, the way that they would use fish in their furrows for that reason.
Yeah, and it always, you read about that when you was in school. The thing that I always wondered is how did you keep the skunks and raccoons out of your garden
Yeah.
from going in there and digging up your dead fish that you planted in the garden?
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily
Because
get
I
rid of
think
them.
you'd had to sit out there 24/7 chasing raccoons and skunks off. Otherwise, they'd have been pulling all your dead fish out of the dirt.
And rendering plants can turn them into cat food.
Well, on fertilizer, we have a seine operation down here in Burley, that they go out and they harvest all the carp at a certain size because of the way their nets are set up, and then they process the carp out of the Snake River down just outside of Burley.
I would imagine that I've not yet seen Frisky's carp in a can. So, uh,
Yeah, it's called fish sticks. No,
yes.
no.
We have another caller with us. Caller, you're on the air on KLIX with Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. Go ahead.
Hey, I just had a question. I may have missed it earlier, but about the mandatory harvest reports.
Hmm.
And is the online still up and running now, or is it still shut down?
I think I heard that they opened that yesterday. They got that going. But if it's not, just call the regional office and they'll help you put it in, or you can call the hotline and they'll put it in for you.
Okay, that's great. And then thanks for the information on the roadkill harvest, the salvage.
You bet.
We got a beautiful young doe the other day. The guy in front of us hit it, and we went ahead and slit its throat, brought her home, and went online and filled out the report. It was just real easy, and then we printed it off, and she's in great shape.
You bet. And we appreciate that when you guys do that, because that keeps us from having to go and pick the animals up. And you see, you kind of got the best of both worlds. You didn't have to pay for the auto insurance bill on your vehicle, and you still got a fresh piece of meat.
Want to thank him for the telephone call. And of course, telephone number to reach us. We've got, I'm going to call it a little over 10 minutes left in the program right now. Kelton Hatch joining us at 9:49 from Idaho Fish and Game. On Top Story with Bill Colley on KLIX. You also wanted to mention the birdseed sale, though, while you were here.
And I threw that in there. Just I've never been a big bird feeder myself, but I know there's a ton of folks around that are. If you're in Boise, the MK Nature Center has a huge Christmas bird or holiday. They call it the holiday bird seed sale. They have all the different types of bird seeds. I think it's thistle, and then they've got the black sunflower seed type dills, and all the different mixtures of bird seed, weed free and things like that. And it goes to support the MK Nature Center. And the MK Nature Center is an area we take about 20,000, 30,000 students through a year, and it's just a discovery center to learn about wildlife. And so it helps support that center over there. So if you're in Boise, swing by the MK Nature Center. You can pick up your bird seed. You can call them at 208 287 2900, or you can email sue.dudley, Dudley, at idfg.idaho.gov, and she can give you a price list, set it aside for you if you're going to be over there, and make sure you can get the bird seed you want.
I used to have one of these bird feeders we had a nice long, looked like a crook, or like from the old days when they'd give the guy a hook on stage,
yeah.
And you would hang the
Sheep
bird
hook.
feeder up. Yeah, right, because you don't want cats climbing up it, and so we would just hang the bird feeder from it. But our cats inside the house got to the point where they would sit in the rec room and just stare out there for hours, and then
it was their YouTube, or not YouTube. It was their Game Boy or their Nintendo system.
It was like they'd be transfixed. But some days, if they were coming down the stairs to the rec room and they'd see birds out there, I thought they were going to run through the glass. They'd run forward and bang right into the sliding glass door. It was like they didn't realize that they had a barrier in between
Yeah.
there.
Well, get a little overstimulated and
Yeah,
they get excited. They think they're going to get to play and catch something to eat.
it did not happen.
No.
Speaking of, well, it's not play because even if you enjoy hunting, it's serious business. If you had a choice, because you mentioned northern Idaho earlier, is it a better place to hunt in northern Idaho up in the mountains and the foothills than let's say down here in the valley?
No. Anywhere you're at's the best place to hunt. If I'm hunting whitetail, yeah, it's a lot better for whitetail. Is it better for turkey? Better for turkey. Better for elk? I don't think so. No, but it's mule deer. It's just different country. I mean, I'm a desert rat. This south central, southeastern Idaho is my kind of country. Rolling hills with some mountains in the background, pines, sagebrush. I can see things a long ways away. I love this country. Big open spaces. I get really claustrophobic up north. Heavy pine forests and stuff like. I've lived in them, worked in them in Alaska. Um, Lived up in Montana for several years. You bet. Beautiful country, got a lot of redeeming qualities. I still like this country, even though we get a little more wind. Um, it's just there's something that's just special about this high desert. A cold breeze in your face and be able to see for 20 miles, is kind of nice in some ways.
I
And
was
these
going to
deep
say,
gorge canyons are phenomenal we have around here. And, I'm not a native to Twin Falls. I'm a native to over by Soda Springs. Is where I was raised, and but I like this over here just because we don't have to shovel snow, still get a little bit of cool, and it's a great place to hunt.
and you don't have the competition from wolves and bears here that you would have in northern Idaho.
Oh, yeah, we do up around Sun Valley and stuff like that. You bet. Same thing, but that's kind of fun because it adds a different thing in there. As long as they're not having a major impact on the wildlife, and we can keep them managed at a good level where we'll always have them, but they're not impacting the population so greatly that we're struggling to keep game out there because it's just a management thing. We're trying to manage all wildlife for wildlife and for the sportsmen and the people of Idaho. It's like I said earlier, we try to when we try to keep the peaks and valleys in predators and prey more level than having the deep spikes. And so, no, it's things are really good right now. Right now is kind of like the good old days. The biggest difference today from the good old days is we've got good game number. It's just harder to get on private property and onto some of the public lands because we've just got more and more people around here. And so, the population's changed. I mean, when I was a kid, it was around 700,000, 800,000 people. Now we're setting at 1,700,000, and that's going to continue to go up. And so we just kind of have to, our Access Yes program's huge, where we're purchasing access for landowners, from landowners for sportsmen, and we're trying to keep different pieces, blocks of land open for people. And so the more people can do positive for the image of hunters, and be polite and be clean up after themselves and things like this, the better it's going to bode for hunting in the future.
We have a caller with us. It's coming up on 9:55, and it's 35. Caller, you're on the air with Kelton Hatch.
Good morning, Kelton. I have a question about general deer tag and a whitetail tag, and I was on the understanding that if you got a general deer tag, you fill that tag. If you was to buy a whitetail tag, that now becomes you have to purchase that at a non-resident rate.
Correct. Which would be about $300.
Yeah. You see that in the future ever changing?
I do. I do see that changing because I don't think that we'll have that many non-resident tags left over because we were getting such a push this year for non-resident tags. I think those tags will sell out sooner and quicker. We try to balance those non-resident tags with the percentage of tags, right around 10% of the tags we sell to the to our residents. And then we look at our harvest data, our aerial data, to make sure that we're not harvesting too many animals. Deer numbers and elk numbers are really up right now. I don't know that we'll increase the number of tags, but I do think they'll disappear quicker. I think people will buy them sooner. And when you look at it, I know $300 sounds like a lot of money, but if you're going to run to Utah or Nevada or Wyoming or Montana to hunt, you've got you're going to have $600 in fuel and lodging and everything else, where I can buy a second tag for $300 and hunt right out my back door.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate your call.
Want to thank him too as well, and I do want to point out that if you didn't get a chance to talk to Kelton today, he'll be back in a few weeks.
We're talking about Christmas presents for the sportsman.
Oh, now there's a great idea.
I hate to bring that up before Thanksgiving because it's just not right. I'm excited about Thanksgiving because I'm ready to eat. After that, I'm ready to talk about Christmas. But
well, and you mentioned the salmon earlier for Thanksgiving. One of the local restaurants is actually serving that Thanksgiving Day, so I'm having a discussion right now in my own head about, do I go there and eat, or
boy, it's tough to beat a fresh piece of sockeye or silver salmon.
Sweet fish to eat too.
Maybe I'll see if I've got some extra salmon. Maybe I'll smoke you up. Maybe I'll smoke you up a chunk and bring it on. I make you put it in brown sugar and salt to cure it, and then I smoke it and baste it in fresh maple syrup with some pepper and garlic. It's to die for. It's good for hors d'oeuvres.
I had mentioned in the last hour that my mouth waters when you start talking about this stuff. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you again. I know that we'll have a lot to talk about in December, as like you pointed out, gifts for outdoorsmen.
And guess what? Hunting season's still going on. You gotta love it. Get out and have some fun. Take your kids out. Take a friend out. Go out and enjoy the outdoors. It's like you said. I loved your segment earlier. Say, I didn't see anybody on the trail. That's why it's awesome, because you just put another jacket on, put a hat on, put some gloves on, and go have some fun.
I agree with that. And at this time of year, you get a lot more of the outdoors all to yourselves. We'll talk to Kelton again in a few weeks. God willing, if the creek don't rise, Bill Colley, me, will be back tomorrow between 8 and 10 o'clock. We'll also have the gun guys in studio with us just after the 9 o'clock news.